Hello and welcome. If you're here for the role of information architecture and adaptive content strategy with Cecil Lee, you are in the right place. Naz Urbina is also joining us today. He'll be co-presenting with Cecil. My name is Scott Abel, the content wrangler, and I'll be your host for today's show. Let me tell you a few things about this webinar in case you're new to the Bright Talk platform. First, we can't see or hear you, so you don't have to worry about your camera or microphone access. There'll be no embarrassing guest appearances by your cat, dog, or children or spouses. So that you don't have to worry about any of that, which ought to be quite a relief. You also can't have direct chat with us, but let me tell you what you can do during the show. You can ask a question at any time using the Ask a Question tab located underneath your webinar viewing panel. When you click on the button, it opens up a little text window that allows you to send a chat message to us. Those are usually for questions that we'd like you to ask, that you'd like me to ask of the guests at the end of the show. You can do that at any time. Keep in mind, I can't chat you back, and I won't know who you are unless you put your name in there. And if you don't want to share your name, that's perfectly fine as well. Additionally, if you get stuck, you need some troubleshooting help, trying to overcome something with the Bright Talk platform, you can look in the attachments section of your webinar viewing panel, also located directly underneath the panel where you find the questions tab. And you can click that and get access to documents that will help you overcome your challenge. There's also some additional information in that area from the presenters. You may be asked during the show to participate in a poll. And if you are, some on-screen instructions will pop up and you'll see a short question with some multiple choice answers, and it's pretty easy. You pop out of full screen mode and you can click on the button with your mouse and answer the poll the way that you see fit. Those results will be tabulated together and it will allow the presenter to speak to the results of the entire audience. You can also access additional content through the attachments and links section of your webinar viewing panel. You can find contact information for both of our guests today, as well as promotional materials for some of the events and things that we'll mention during today's show. And you can access information about the Content Wrangler in case you'd like to participate as a webinar guest in the future. You can suggest yourself or somebody else, and we'd appreciate it if you did. At the end of the show, I'll ask you to give us some feedback on our 1 through 5 star rating system. It's pretty easy. It pops up and asks you on a scale of 1 to 5, with 5 being the high level rating, what you thought of today's content in the show. And there's also a little field in which you can share an anecdotal comment or some kind of hello or a feedback to the presenters. And I know they'd appreciate that if you did. So thanks in advance for doing that. And without further ado, let's welcome to our stage our co-host today, who's going to guide us through today's presentation, Naz Urbina. Naz, are you on the line?
I am. Can you hear me?
Excellent. You sound great. It's so good to hear from you, Naz. I haven't talked to you in a long time. So thanks for joining us today. Before we get started, can you tell us a little bit about your connection to the topic today?
Absolutely. I have been a passionate advocate of adaptive content for about 7 or 8 years. I think since I was part of how the term started gaining popularity. And I have worked with Cecil and our host, Precision Content, before.
Excellent. And you've brought Cecil in. Cecil, are you here today? Are you on the line?
I am here.
It's success. It's so much for, we Zoom failure and all of that. We didn't want any of that to happen to you today. So Cecil, thanks for joining us today. Where are you located? Where are you broadcasting from?
I am located in Indianapolis, Indiana.
Excellent.
Snowy day today.
My old hometown. Yes, I escaped that snow. I'm happy that you are experiencing it, hopefully safely inside and not having to go out and shovel the driveway or anything exciting.
Yeah, well, we just did.
Yeah, you just did, exactly. Can you tell us a little bit about your responsibilities at Eli Lilly and as they relate to the subject of today's show?
Yes, I was the business lead for driving this program and implementing an adaptive content strategy at Eli Lilly in the medical information organization. So I'm going to go over this case study. Looking forward to it.
Excellent. All right, so gentlemen, I'm going to put myself on mute and allow Naz to start the show with an introduction to adaptive content. And then I'll be in the background monitoring the questions coming in from the audience and helping in any way that I can behind the scenes. If you need me at any time, please feel free to ask for help. I don't anticipate that you do, but if you do, I'll jump back on the line and assist you. And to the audience members who have just joined us, welcome. I hope that you enjoy the show. If you've got a question for the presenter at any time, use the Ask a Questions button located underneath your webinar viewing panel to text a question to our chat area, and I'll monitor them and ask Cecil and Naz as many questions as possible with the time remaining after their presentation. All right, gentlemen, I'll put myself on mute and take it away.
Okay, hi everybody. So we're actually going to start out with a little poll here to understand a bit about what you're looking to gain by attending this session. So I can see some of you are already responding to the poll question, which is open now, and I've got a good number of responses already. So the top two responses that I can see here on the poll are creating omni-channel content. And that's creeping up there as I said it, and then more people clicked. The next one is improve consistency, followed by improve search result relevance. So I think that that's pretty typical. I think what we're going to tell you today was probably be right on what you're looking to learn about. So I'm going to move on into telling you a little bit about myself. I am a content strategist and modeler. I am an author of a book some of you may have heard of called Content Strategy, Connecting the Dots Between Business, Brand, and Benefits. And I lecture in the master's program at the University of Applied Sciences in Graz, Austria. So I have been in this game, working in telecommunications, pharma, heavy and high tech, medical devices, enterprise software for well over 18 years now, and actually launched a conference of my own called Omnichannel X, which I'll tell you a little bit more about in a minute. So in that role, that's where I met Cecil, who I have worked with on this project that we're gonna tell you about. And I think if I'm not incorrect, I was the one who introduced Cecil to the wonderful world of adaptive content at one of our conference workshops. So a little bit about the Omnichannel X Conference. The Omnichannel X Conference is something we do every year. It's been online since we went into pandemic mode, and it's coming up again in June 2021, and you could win a ticket. So stay tuned till the end of the session. They're going to have lots of great presenters there from companies like Eli Lilly and more. So I want to start with measuring success. Why are we doing omnichannel content? Why do we want to change the definition of good? Why do we want to change what we're doing at all? And a lot of it has to do with changing a mindset between what we're often talking about when we talk about content quality and success, which are the channel analytics that a particular channel throws up. Like for our digital content, that can be clicks and likes and downloads and shares and so on. And for content, we look at things like spelling errors or readability and so on. But none of these actually move the needle on what the business is after. So what we're looking for is something that really kind of helps customers. Many of you have probably heard of Net Promoter Score. Net Promoter Score is the way that a lot of brands were measuring whether they were doing a good job. A Net Promoter Score is what are the chances that one of your customers would promote you or recommend you to one of their customers. And that was all the rage for probably the past decade or so. What we're moving to now, and we're seeing this grow to overtake Net Promoter Score, is what we call a customer effort score. And a customer effort score is, as you can see on the screen, 40% more accurate at predicting customer loyalty as opposed to customer satisfaction or something like Net Promoter. Why is that important? Because if we're content people, we're trying to help people with our content to do something, to understand something, to complete a task, to make a purchase decision, even to entertain themselves. They need to understand what their options are. So making their tasks easier or harder is kind of what we're all about. So the fact that customer effort score is becoming a high-level management business metric is really great for content people, because what we do helps things become easier for our users. And also, I'm a big advocate of measuring customer journeys. And here again, we have McKinsey & Company saying that measuring on customer journeys is 30% more predictive of overall customer satisfaction than measuring each individual interaction. How is that relevant to content and this project? Well, what you're going to see in the presentation is we looked at real user experience, and we thought about how can content best suit our users in the context they're in. How can we make things easier for them so that they can move along their journey, rather than measuring content in its, what website traffic or things like that. When you're measuring, we want to measure content and the different interfaces. So I mentioned the Omnichannel X Conference. It's, of course, about omnichannel. And when you're making omnichannel content, which was one of the most popular things on the poll, we need to say, well, what is content separate from the channel? So we can, and we should, measure content quality improvements independently of channel. And then, as a separate exercise, also measure in-channel to ensure that the overall UX is optimized. So what I was finding is that customers would very often come to me and say, we have to do this because we want to make production cheaper, or we want to, people can't find things. They say, we've got to fix the search engine. People can't find their answers. And we have pushed back on that often as a consultancy, and said, well, they're saying they can't find something. That doesn't mean the same thing as the search engine needs fixing. What about the content itself? I use the metaphor of the rainbow. So people can have a wonderful user experience and design and search engine, which is kind of traversing the rainbow to get to your pot of gold. But if you get to the pot of gold and it's not gold, it's a bunch of wood chips or sawdust, no one is going to be happy with that experience. So we isolated content and said, what can we measure from improvements to content alone? And we used metrics like time to answer. And we find out that if we make our content really concise, well-labeled, well-structured, and ready for omnichannel, then we could actually show people the same page written one way and the same page written another way, just in a plain Word document, and they could find their answers 42% faster. They were 45% more satisfied with the experience of finding that answer, and they were 27% more confident in the accuracy of the answer they found. So not what is it like to get to the pot of gold, but once you're there, how do you feel about the content that you're looking at? So the on-page experience of consuming and understanding the content. And then the last number there, the most impressive one, is, of course, accuracy. And we, in this particular case study, this is a different case study, the one we're about to present, but it uses the same methodologies and techniques. They were only finding the correct answer 18% of the time, and 38% of the time, they were finding the answer, but they were wrong. And we were able to get that up to 64 and 8%. So by looking at not how are my individual channels performing, but my content in the background, ready for all these different channels and ready to be adapted to all these different situations, have we got that right? That's one of our big focuses, and that's what's something that Cecil and I worked on extensively. Good content creates big benefits. So this is not one of my projects. This is a study that General Electric did, where they looked at a 5-month 4-company study, and they shipped manuals to different clients. And to these companies, there were kind of a focus group of companies with many users inside. They shipped a new and improved set of documentation to test how would that affect other things. And they saw that high quality documentation reduced all call volumes, not just calls about documents, but all call volumes, which is by 90%, which for them was $1 million in annual savings. So good quality content has a ripple effect across other channels. And if you can present that in an effective and customer-centric way that helps them along their journey, then you're helping them, and you're helping, of course, your own brand and your own business. So how do we do that? We use the methodology called precision content, which is comes from an organization which is is very nicely helping us sponsor this session. And this methodology is about how you actually consider the words on the page. So how do you create content that is ready for omnichannel and is concise, well labeled, and ready for machine processing? In all of our projects, we go through a design phase. So we look at what are the content types in particular for this project. So I just mentioned that we use the precision content standard. That's a writing methodology. But for the particular user and their journey, we design content types. And so we design content around customer needs and journeys like a product. We have a specification for the content. We do iterations on that specification, which is called the content model. And each component of content has a type, which has associated guidelines for how you write it, how do you add metadata to it, how it should be structured, how it should be processed. We have lots of guidelines for how you put titles and things like that. And the point is that all of this consistency is what makes components adaptable, manageable, reusable, and automation ready for personalized omnichannel output. So if you're looking to reuse to improve consistency, if you're looking to make it so that your content is more concise, which is more search engine friendly, and your entire search experience, not just the search engine part, but the entire search consumption and getting out the answer experience is effective, then adaptive content based on well-structured, consistent components will help advance your goals significantly. I mentioned the term content model. So we decide what are the types of content that the user is going to need for their particular use case. And Cecil will show you some of these examples, and I'm going to show you one in a second. But all those types go together in a model, which talks about how these different types of content work together, their relationships and roles. So this is a little example for describing case study information or information about projects. And you have things like case studies, you have principles, which are like lessons learned, the people who are involved in the project, their roles, they might have testimonials, the companies involved, the solutions involved, and so on. And so each of these might be on a page on its own, but it might be compiled together into a white paper or into a case study book. So this separates the content from the channel. We can measure it on its quality independently of channel, and then it's ready for reuse across all of our channels. Here's specifically one of the before and afters I told you about earlier. So this is, I said that was a different project. This is actually the project that I worked on with Cecil, he's gonna take you in depth on this. But I wanted to show you this one example. So on the left, you don't have to read all this, of course, but you can see the yellow highlighted areas. The point of this is that before we had a kind of a study report, and then we just started talking about the study. And this was written in a way such that everything in that one big paragraph on the left became everything that's in the yellow area on the right. So we went from a very long and actually quite hard to read, even if you're a specialist, that's a very long and hard to read paragraph. And we broke that down, and on the right, we said that the proclaimed study was a multi-center randomized phase 3 study comparing treatment with the concurrent use of one drug and another drug in patients with a certain type of cancer. So if you are a doctor, on your journey to learn about this study or find out about this drug and how it could be used in combination with another one, then in that one shorter sentence, now you know who it was, what the study's about, how it was done, and what kind of patients were involved. That is a very nice little sentence to put in things like search engine results or a mobile phone screen or any other interface in your omnichannel landscape. Whereas the first one, much harder to get a quick idea of what you're talking about. And then we thought about what do the target audience want to know next? They'll want to know how the study was done. And so it actually says in that paragraph on the left exactly how it was done, but we actually broke it down and we put the process into the 1, 2, 3 of how it was accomplished. So you can much more easily understand it. And then we pulled out the patients, because the next thing they might want to know is, who was this done on? Also under its own heading, and said that the patients had unreselectable stage 3 AB non-squamous, etc. Cancer. So now we have consistency in our structure. Things are being labeled as what they are. So with your eye, you can move across the page much more easily. And this is how you get those huge boosts in comprehension and people finding the actual answers that they want. By structuring the content and making the content consistent, regardless of channel, for any channel. So it's a shift in focus. We're moving to a business asset value kind of focus. We're looking at the success of customers and users, and we're turning our content into a business asset. So adaptive content, as you can see, is conceived, planned, and developed around the customers, their context, their mood, their goals. And there's a little bit.ly URL if you want to check out the article where that quote is from, that I wrote quite a while now, and is kind of my first big piece about adaptive content. And adaptive content is the only way forward for multi-channel. You can't really do omnichannel without adaptive, well-structured content. The more we can make content adaptive, the more we can realistically deliver tailored, high-value content without running out of budget, resources, or time. So it's kind of your only way that you can survive the transition to omnichannel, is to get smarter about how you create structure and deliver your content. So now I'm going to hand over to Cecil, who is going to take you into even greater depth about this story and the journey that we went on together.
That's great. Thank you, Nas.
Okay.
I still remember, our exercise on content modeling, and we would feel like the geek squad of content at that time.
Absolutely.
All right, thank you, Nas. So I do also have another polling question, and you can see here, if you measure content reuse, what percentage is overall content reuse? I can see that our audience have already started to provide some insight over here. It seems the majority around 0 to 24%, and also we have a lot of people would say, I don't know, or not sure, at this time. And actually, this is very common. I would kind of expected that too, because that's how we actually started, on our journey, was looking at this content reuse space. And we also actually started as a fairly low number. So I'd like to share with you a case study today on our journey, especially measuring, content reuse as a KPI, which I'm going to go over a little bit shortly. But before I begin, I'd like to share a little bit more about our company, Eli Lilly. So you might have heard about this because recent news of our fight against COVID-19 as well. So this the picture shows here is our main campus in Indianapolis in Indiana. That's where I live. And then so we have been here. Eli Lilly has been here for 140 years, manufacturing pharmaceutical products to patients worldwide. And so and this is my 20th year in Lilly, and majority of that was spent in medical information, as I'm a pharmacist by trade. At Lilly, there are some really large organizations. There are commercial, marketing, sales, R&D, manufacturing, and medical, and that's where medical information resides. And if you're not familiar with this profession, we essentially are authors to create medical content of our products and answering questions for healthcare professionals worldwide. So through the years, I've really seen the evolution of medical information in the past decade. We were starting with like an information provider, which is creating content, for people to consume. But now we're becoming more a trusted partner with the healthcare professionals, and together we solve a particular patient's drug-related problem. So today is about a case study to share on our journey how we have evolved providing content to healthcare professionals. So healthcare professionals are deluged with data, making choices in an increasingly complex and stressed healthcare system. They are truly information overload, and they really have no time. So healthcare professionals today, they're also very tech savvy. They would like to have their answers to be really relevant and very precise, timely, and in the channel that they desire, and also in the devices that they use. The truth is, we were not meeting those needs at all. In the past, we were writing more traditionally in Word document and printable document. And thinking about this is kind of mind-boggling how one can read all those Word document in the mobile phone. So now we are actually writing more in a website or in the mobile apps, managing content that are more digital friendly. So a little bit about medical information. So in fact, medical information is quite a centralized organization where we would create content at a global level in US, then disseminate to our counterparts around the world in Europe, Japan, China, Latin America. Then they would then apply local regulatory rules and put more content on top of the global content. And then they have additional local approval, and then they share with the healthcare professionals. So in order to do that, we really need to create a consistent answer. And I know this is one of the desire, earlier on during the poll, a consistent answer that can share across geographies, as well as potentially use across the channels as how healthcare professional interacts with us. So the key thing is that how do we create more like channel agnostic content? In this illustration, we provide our content more in a multi-channel way, like call centers that healthcare professionals can contact us, to websites that they can browse, to our latest, which is chatbot as well. So through our adaptive content strategy, we were able to create a consistent content across all these channels, which by itself, to be honest, is an achievement. In our near future, we are heading towards more an omni-channel approach along with our marketing organization so that we can provide the right content to the right customer and in the right time. So this gives back a little bit about our context. Once upon a time, just a few years back, how we organize content feels quite cumbersome. Our content were created in Microsoft Word, and it was very document focused. It's kind of like this example over here. It's very text heavy, very long paragraph. It was actually written with a mindset of giving as much data as possible to the people who read it. But in fact, when we write it, we know the answer to that question is usually embedded in the document. But the work is actually done by the healthcare professional who needs to go through the entire document to get to the answer. So that was the past. But then we also have the digital age that hit us, is that we're starting to create our Lilly Medical website and allowing healthcare professionals to self-serve in finding more content. We get to learn about what SEO is. So we're medical authors and we don't really know what search engine optimization is at that time. So it's very challenging when we're not trained to write digital. So each channel that we started to develop, and we have to create new and separate content. And so that we also have additional review and approval. And it was just too taxing for our whole organization to even keep up. And furthermore, resources were not expanding at all. We add new channels, but there were no additional resources. So you can see that was kind of our background, and we have a lot of big challenges ahead for us. And so what we need to do was we really need to set a better vision of how we're going to address all those big rocks. So as the program lead here at Lilly, I sometimes see myself, as like a tour guide, kind of waving a flag and bringing people along. So what I do is I think about like a Google map, like you kind of post in where your destination is, and you bring people along with you, and you navigate any traffic jam, and then so that you tell people when you're going to get there. And so that's exactly what we've done, when we first started the journey. And so we tell the story of a content strategy called CORE. We really love this slogan, to be honest. Create once and reuse everywhere. This really has been our guiding light, for us to pursue in smarter creation of content. So I'd like to borrow a quote, from my distant relative Bruce Lee. He once said, "Clear your minds. You put water into a cup, it becomes the cup. You put water into a bottle, it becomes the bottle. You put it in a teapot, it becomes the teapot." So it is all about the fluidity, of the content, being adaptive, and you can pour that content into multiple channels, containers, such as a document or website or an app. By sharing this type of a concept, to everyone, it helps people to understand we're writing content as is, and you can reuse content, into your deliverables. So we also help to help people to understand what the adaptive content, so that they know the what. So there are some key features of adaptive content I'd like to share that with you. It resonates very well with our company. So they need to be intelligent, which means machine readable, and allow machines to drive more automation, such as auto formatting or even creation of content. They need to be structurally rich, where content are organized and allow reader to consume, navigate, and finding content very quickly. They also need to have reuse, in mind. When we say reuse, we also have a slogan called "Search before you create," because if you reuse, you increase the efficiency of producing content and also allow the traceability of content being used. So one beautiful thing is, if the content from the source has been changed, we now know what content downstream would be impacted because the reuse has been tracked. This is a major advantage, for tracking of content, especially when the relationship is being built. So last but not least, adaptable. So where there are channel agnostic content that are created, there are also some content. There are also some content that could be channel specific, but the key thing is that when you create content, you want to be adaptable, not only in one single channel, but as much as possible to shared, to different channels, so that you increase efficiency there. So that's in a nutshell what adaptive content is. So when we first started, so Nos knows about this as well too, is that where do we begin? Now we know the vision with North Star, but we need to really look at some of the big rocks that we have. And the first thing that we did was looking at our people. So the very start is to changing the mindset of our authors and writing team. So we did not start with technology implementation. So I really love this quote because if I had more time, I would write a shorter letter. So it's because it has a user-centric thinking. It also takes an effort. It also shares that there's an effort, to write things in a more succinct and precise way. So if you remember, I shared that our culture has been providing as much information as possible so that we cover all the needs that healthcare professionals have. That would not do anymore. We cannot do that anymore. So what we need to do is that we need to think, how do we create content with the reader in mind? And so that as they consume the information, it will be fast for them, and they can find things much more quicker. So that's how we started. And so we work with NOS and also Precision Content and deployed what we call structured authoring methodology. So we clearly painted a from and to picture like this, you can see here. And all our authors were trained, in this writing methodology. And we had sharing sessions, we had subject matter experts starting to lead other groups. So it becomes a daily work that they know how to create content in this way. So it was technology agnostic, but it really does sets the foundation for deploying the component authoring technology that came later. Okay, so I'll use a good example, to talk about what's the difference between the structured authoring content. So I know Nos was showing one. I'm going to walk you through a more detailed example. So imagine there's a health group professional asking a question: is immunocompromised patients an exclusion criteria for a clinical trial? So what you see over here, this is an actual writing, of course, with the fake drug name of the content that we were used to write. And then if I ask you that question, we know that answer is somewhere in there. But even as a physician, you may need to kind of read through it twice to kind of pick up where the answer is. So it's all a matter of how we organize our content in here. And so using structured authoring, we were able to rewrite in this way on the right-hand side, with clear label and also with blocks and also sections over here. So if you ask the same question, is immunocompromised patients an exclusion criteria for the clinical trial? So immediately pops out and said, I can find exclusion criteria over here as a section, and I can also see immunocompromised is right there. And so this way, it is significantly reduced the time, for people to find the content. And in addition, when we're thinking about reuse, think about this whole block of content. The exclusion criteria can be a whole block of text that can be reused, because whenever we talk about the clinical trial in many different settings, we can always reuse the exclusion criteria. So this gives a lot of flexibility for reuse of content. If we are still writing a very long-winded way on the left-hand side, it's very hard to reuse content. So one tip over here is that if you wanted to increase the reusability of content, you need to think more granularly. You need to think a little bit more in smaller pieces of content and allowing more flexible reuse. So that is, the bigger the content that you create, the whole chunk is much harder to reuse. All right, so that was the beginning, how we started to create our writing methodology. Was different. So the journey to get there was also quite a good, interesting exercise as well. So I'd like to share with you some thoughts about how we actually got there. So now that our authors were ready, they were more ready to explore some new capabilities and tech, that our content world can offer. So we built a business case of projected ROI on measuring content reuse as a KPI. So it served very well to our leadership to understand there is a return on investment, especially we continue to create once and reuse everywhere. So with our leader sponsorship, which was really a critical success factor, our pilot were able to start. And we started with 3 brands, one in each business unit or therapeutic areas. And we launched it to US, Europe, and Japan in 1 year. So why we did that was really to understand the different stakeholders' onboarding experience with these very large business unit, and we can adjust our change management strategy. So you may ask why US, Europe, and Japan is simply because they're the hardest to implement. So the US process is very complex and have very large infrastructure. Europe have many languages, and there's a lot of localization challenges. And Japan has its own unique requirement and also content dissemination. So we knew if we're able to deploy to these regions, then we know we were able to deploy to the rest of the world. Okay, so from the writing methodology now to more the technology side of things. So in order for us to get to that ultimate stage, we deploy component authoring. And so this is a more relational-based component authoring, content creation. And so simply is once your content is being reused, the relationship between the parent and child of the content is automatically created. And so we really love that. And you're able to trace your reusability, and you also can trace, when there's one change, what are the downstream changes that it could be. So as the program lead, this is definitely not something that I was able to do alone. I was really grateful to have 12 people, particularly in global and the affiliate in the countries, to learn this new technology and paving the way. They're very courageous, to start completely creating something different, but they also help to build a very strong community of authors. They share a lot of best practices, did a lot of trial and error, and they provide a lot of tips, across not only to their own organization, but share across, to others, around the world. And so I really truly see them as the change leaders, for this type of initiative. So if you're ever thinking about leading this type of transformation in your organization, I highly recommend getting a group of subject matter experts to go along with you, and not only have them providing input to build the technology together, but they're very key to helping driving success. Okay, I also like to talk about partnership as well. So I'm from the business side, but then we also have leaders, from our IT organization to making sure that our the engineering, of the content and the technology is being implemented. So I really appreciate how they thought about implementing this in a quality validated way. And also helping us to ground, what can we do today? And so I jokingly sometimes say, they're the mission control. When I try to send a rocket up, I really won't launch until they do the countdown, that type of thing. So it's really cool. We also have the actual technology itself. So user experience is very important for the technology if you want to have good adoption. So it needs to be intuitive. And it also has the ability, it needs to have the ability to also migrate content. So thinking about if your content currently are in Word, kind of like us, you need to have a way to able to migrate the content in a new way to make it intelligent. That would help a huge boost to the initial adoption. Last but not least, stakeholders for your content is not just the people who create it, but are people who review and approve it. This is extremely key because they would provide whether your content is good or not. So we have dedicated training to review improvers, and so that they understand what our direction is and also why reusing content is actually a really good thing for them. And in fact, if they can see that approved content has been reused, they speed up the whole time for them to review the entire project. So definitely partner with review improvers, bringing them on board at the same time. Okay, so after all that journey, what is we reach our destination. So I'd like to share a little bit more about the results of all that work from that. This is our content reuse percentage. So we were able to hit 77%, on our production content. And how do we actually measure that? Was looking at verbatim reuse and also derivative reuse. So verbatim reuse are component reuse without changes. So they're pretty much like a one-to-one reuse. So example, like the exclusion criteria that I had shown earlier on, you can just completely reuse it because there's no changes to it. It came from a long-term study, so there's no changes to it. Derivatives are sometimes you make certain changes to the content, but you have been reusing majority of the content, and so those are derivative reuse. And the original are the ones that are originated by the author, and there's no reuse at all. This was a very effective KPI, for our program, and it resonates, with throughout the company, and it encourages people to actually reuse content. Why? It's because you can understand the efficiency that you can come from doing that. And one thing I can share is that our organization have not increased any headcount of authors, but then the company was able to have a whole lot more launch products. So the actual products have been expanded significantly, but we have not increased any headcount. So this actually has to be a very efficient way of creating content, or else we will not be able to do that. Okay, so I'm going to take just a few more minutes on where we're actually going. Now that you know our core strategy, so we have a core 2 strategy. And so this is essentially what we are working towards. So when an author is creating a new response, the first thing that we ask them to do is search, and then you reuse before you create. And so what they can do is that they can find a particular reusable component, and this component can most likely come from another response that was approved in the past. And so you can reuse that component to create in your new response. And you can also reuse coming from multiple different approved content, from before. And so in this way, this is your component authoring methodology, over here. So this has already been achieving. And the next phase that we are working towards is looking at how do we use the content into the multiple channel way in a more effective way. So think about a new channel that we have, which is a chatbot. A chatbot is, they cannot really consume a huge document of content. It basically consumes a small chunk of content out of our response. So it needs to be more like a conversational type of a response to inside a chat. So we need to only extract a small amount of information in here. But thinking about your multi-channel approach, then you need to have content that can be ready, for the different channels. And then when you create once in the middle over here, it can then generate automatically the responses to the other channels. And so this is where we seeing more automation, to come. And this helps us to be more ready when we have additional new channel that's coming in the future. We would have the right content, to mold to fit to the other channel. So that automation is kind of our second level of core strategy. And we have one more, which is core 3, you may say, is the inter-organization of reuse of content. So we have been focusing on medical information, which is right in the middle, and we're providing that to our customer. But we're also not all the time the source of the information. We have different organizations at Lilly that we could reuse the content from, such as our technical quality group, such as our global scientific communications group. They have valuable content they generated that we would like to reuse. And this, traditionally, we have been working more like a silo. So we can actually break that silo and then reuse some valuable content that they have. It really enhances, our response. And not only that, if they change content upstream, then global medical information, then we would know what's been changed, and we can have more real-time changes downstream to our customer. So this is another strategy that we are working towards, and it's more getting to more like an enterprise content strategy mindset. So after all that, I come back to the people, because I really think that people are really your true measure of success. So some of the authors who's gone through this journey, on here, they gave some of these anecdotal type of feedback. And the one that resonated with me a lot was the last one. It said, I find it challenging to go back to work in old ways. I'm thinking how to build a response rather than how to write a response. So it was super when I heard that. It just touches my heart. So those are that is some of the feedback that's very encouraging from our authors. And last but not least, I'm going to borrow Bruce Lee quote again: "Be water, my friend." So I want to thank you for this time, on this, and I think we are going for more like a Q&A now.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Cecil. And Naz, are you still on the line?
I am.
Excellent. We can hear you. So that's a good first step. So let me ask, I'm not sure which of you to ask, so I'll start with Cecil, and then Naz, if you want to jump in, you can. Cecil, what's the underlying markup for the content? Are you utilizing XML? And if so, is it a specialized form of XML or a standard that other folks might also be able to deploy?
Yeah, it's the underlying is JSON, but then we don't get to see it, from a user experience. So it's more like we only see it in interface that we actually see the content. So we don't really see the markup. Yeah.
Good. And then the second question was, had you considered using information mapping to help with authoring your structured content? I didn't hear you say that, but I think somebody in the audience is curious if you ever went down that road to decide if that might be a good fit.
So, for us, we did when we did the structured authoring, we did do some content modeling work. So to look at what are some of the how do we structure our content, and also how do we look at the most commonly reusable content, and we identify those. So I think information mapping is a really large word for me. So but that's exactly what we've done. But it helps kickstart of the journey of how the authors actually can know what to reuse the content. Yeah.
Can I jump in there on that one?
Yes, please, because I think what they're after is like, hey, I know about information mapping. Why wasn't that a good thing? Is it a good thing?
Yeah.
And if
so, this is a. Oh, sorry.
I'm just gonna say, is it a good thing or a bad thing, or is it somewhere in between? Like maybe it's a good thing to borrow some of the principles from information mapping, but information mapping itself isn't the thing that makes adaptive content happen. Can you talk about your feelings on that?
Sure. So this is information. So Cecil, what we did was information mapping, like little I, little m, like mapping out what information we had and how we wanted to structure it. I think the question that the attendee is asking is actually big I, big M. There's actually a company and an organization and a standard called information mapping, which I don't see a lot of in projects these days. So that's not to say it's bad. The methodology we used, precision content, actually does take a lot of inspiration and a lot of good things from information mapping. So I don't want to say that information mapping is bad in any way, because there's lots of good lessons in there that we did apply in the project. It's a little different, a little bit more document centric information mapping, whereas what we did is probably more suited towards adaptive content.
Great. One viewer says that they saw an announcement about your event, Noz, the Omnichannel X Conference, from a company called Gather Content, that they said is a structured content authoring tool. They wanted to know, did you use Gather Content to create the content for this project?
Well, I'll answer that because it was kind of directed at me. No, we didn't. So Gather Content was not the tool for this project. Gather Content is a tool which, and they're getting better and better at their structure capabilities. But we've used a variety at Urbina Consulting, a variety of different tools over the years to do this, and it's kind of a rabbit hole to start getting into the pros and cons. So, but not in this case.
Cecil, what about you? How did your authors? What tools are they using to create their content?
So you're talking about the component authoring
Yeah.
technology? Sorry, I'm just trying to understand. So we've been using Docuvera.
And could you describe what that is?
It's a relational component authoring system.
Okay. And is that used to manage content or to author?
Sorry, say it again.
Is that used to manage the content? Is that a content management system, or is it authoring, or is it a hybrid system?
It's an authoring tool.
It's an authoring tool.
Yeah.
One of our questions was from a viewer was, how do you manage all that content then?
So those content being authored as components are also managed within this tool as well. If you think about that, the relationship between the components are captured in this tool.
Okay.
Yeah.
When there are previously approved components, one of our viewers asks, and they're pulled together into a new document, do they need to be reapproved again? Good question.
I love that question. I love that question. Yes, it is good. So in a way, no, because in your new project or in your new work that you're doing, in the tool, it allows us to actually see the previously approved content as grayed out. So when you look at the whole thing, you can still see how that previously approved content fit into the whole new project. But then you don't really have to spend too much time looking at already previously approved content.
Sure. Cecil, question for you, excuse me, from an audience member. Can you talk a little bit about customer impact or satisfaction with this new way of writing and the new kinds of content that you created? How is it used to inform and how content is maintained and approved? So really, the satisfaction, I think, is the key thing. Can you talk a little bit about that? How do you know that you've had the satisfaction?
Yeah, I think we actually this is a good question, because we had some more internal way of looking at that content, but not so much about kind of soliciting external customer type of satisfaction, on this piece, just because of the nature of our organization, being in medical. But in a way, we've been sharing this types of methodology of creating content all across, our internal stakeholders have provided lots of good satisfaction results, especially when they can see content are being organized. And then it's a night and day. Sometimes when you read content more like a white paper, turn into more structured. So it was well received. Yeah.
I can also say that the statistics that I showed at the beginning, which were using different management and authoring tool, but the same methodologies, those were actual customer statistics.
Great. And I like the author feedback slide that you showed with the comments, because I think that answers the personal question about the people on your staff. When managers have to ask people to change, the very first thing that they should probably recognize is that people don't want to do that. It's just that we're wired for consistency, as long as it's our consistency, right? Not somebody else's new consistency. Someone also said, congratulations on the 77% reuse rate. In a global environment, are there authors and countries that do more of the content creation, while authors and countries or maybe in other places are content repurposers as opposed to content creators?
Yes. So it depends on some of the countries that are out there. They may have more resources. So some countries such as UK, Germany, Japan, they may have more content creation at that time at their level, but still we were able to build a culture that they should reuse global content first. So whenever it's available, they should just localize and translate. And then whenever it's appropriate to customize to the local region, they can do so. The major content creation is at the global level. It's written in English, and it's much easier to localize that way.
Excellent. And it's the language of science, so it makes a lot of sense. All right. Well, we're getting ready to end the show today, so I wanted to thank you, Cecil, for joining us today. I really appreciate your time and energy and your ability to communicate effectively what it was that your team worked on. So congratulations on your success. That was a great job. And Naz, thanks for helping guide us and helping understand the topic as a whole. That was great. And I'm appreciative of you also joining us today. So thank you to you both. And thanks to our sponsor, Precision Content, for being the sponsor of today's show. In case those of you are unfamiliar with Precision Content is ready to help you do amazing things with your content. They offer personalization, reuse, and omni-channel delivery services, providing a full suite of content transformation abilities and training that is ready to help you whenever you're ready to rethink or restructure or rewrite your high-value content to make it more reusable, more discoverable, and to prepare it for the people and the systems that are needed today. So check out Precision Content on the web at precisioncontent.com. And don't forget that in the downloads section, the attachments and links section of your webinar viewing panel, you can access more information about Precision Content. And by the way, the winner of our Omnichannel X free conference ticket drawing is Lee Engfer from Mayo Clinic. Lee will receive a special invitation from Naz via email, inviting her to attend the show. And I encourage you all to give them a look as well. You can Google that, or you can look in the attachments section for Omnichannel Conference and Omnichannel X, and you'll find a link there to the site. You can learn about all the presenters. Speaking of presenters, tomorrow we have a great session with Peggy Sanchez, brought to you by Zoom In Software. She's going to talk about how you can get beyond Google Analytics and measure and optimize self-service content, especially technical documentation and support content. You're not going to want to miss that. And oh, this is going to be my favorite show, I think, of the year. February 25th, a conversation with Mignon Fogarty, also known as Grammar Girl, on the changing nature of English language. Bring your pet peeves and your grammar questions. She'll be there and ready to help you answer them. That's on our Coffee and Content show that's brought to you by EasyData. And I'm Scott Abel, the Content Wrangler. Thanks for joining us for today's show. Do us a favor and use the 1 through 5 star rating system to leave a rating for Cecil and Naz to let them know what you thought about the quality of the content they provided today. 5 stars is a high rating, 1 is low, and there's also a field for you to share your thoughts with them. I know they'd appreciate it. Don't forget to download content from the attachments section, and there's contact information for both of our presenters in there as well. If you'd like to learn more about them or reach out to engage them afterwards to find out a little bit more about their project or the services that Naz offers. And thanks. You've been watching a case study with Cecil Lee and Naz Urbina on the role of information architecture and adaptive content strategy, brought to you by Precision Content and the Content Wrangler. Thanks for joining us today. Be safe, be well, and keep doing great work. Until next time, we'll see you again. Have a great day. Bye-bye.